In today's episode, we are going to take a small break from our regularly scheduled programming, talking about the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. There is something going on right now within the government and the IRS that is more urgent and more pressing. And I don't know if you know about it or not, but even if you don't have a tax issue currently, it will affect you.
Welcome to the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast. Are you behind on taxes? Is the IRS threatening you or your business? Are you overwhelmed and confused about how to resolve your tax issues? Let's join Timalyn as she explains your options and how she may be able to help. Timalyn Bowens is America's favorite EA.
Hey family, welcome to episode 69 of the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast. In today's episode, we are going to take a small break from our regularly scheduled programming, talking about the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. There is something going on right now within the government and the IRS that is more urgent and more pressing. And I don't know if you know about it or not, but even if you don't have a tax issue currently, it will affect you. So that's why in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the government shutdown and how that impacts the IRS, because I've seen some misconceptions flying around online that a government shutdown equals an IRS shutdown, and that's not exactly true. So in today's episode, I'm going to break down what the government shutdown is, how it actually affects the IRS, and then how it's going to affect you as well, because whether you have tax issues or not, you will be impacted by this shutdown because of the time of year that is happening, the transitions with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and then just the 2026 tax season in general. All right. So if you're a note taker, get your pen and your paper ready. I do want to point out that if you are listening to this right now on your favorite platform, I decided to do this episode with video as well. So a few episodes ago, we did the enhanced senior deduction podcast episode by video, and the feedback was good. So because this is so urgent, because it's so important, not just to me, but also in how it will affect you, I've also done this one video as well, so that you can see in my eyeballs and see the urgency of the matter. Okay. And I even got on my America's favorite EA hat. And if you have been following the YouTube channel, you know, if I have my hat on, it's going to be a good episode. All right. So I have my notes here because you guys know I can tend to go on rants. I will give this disclaimer first. This is not an episode to talk about government inefficiencies, okay? Although at times it can be viewed that way if we're looking at why we are experiencing a government shutdown, okay? So first of all, we're going to talk about what the government shutdown is and how it impacts the IRS, all right? We're going to talk about how the IRS is still open, but what that's going to look like. The IRS is not shut down. You do not have a get out of jail free card right now if you owe taxes. We're also going to talk about how you should prepare for the delays and the impact that this will have on next filing season in 2026. All right. So let's get right to it. The government shutdown does not mean that everybody gets to go home and nobody works. Instead, a government shutdown happens when Congress can't agree on the budget. So yes, you hear the news talk about the amount of debt that the U.S. is in. We have a lot of debt, but we're not completely bankrupt. The shutdown doesn't mean, oh, the United States doesn't have any money at all. It means that Congress hasn't decided over this next period of time how the money is supposed to be spent within the budget. So that's why government employees, even while they're working, are not getting paid because nothing has been allocated towards their pay for this period of time. So we have the government shutdown. only essential workers are supposed to be working. Well, when we look at that, right now, the date this episode is going to drop is going to be October 10th. We have 5 days. Sorry, I'm conscious of being in the video. We have 5 days until the individual extensions are due. We have 5 days until the corporate tax extensions are due. So it seems to me that the IRS would be somewhat essential, right? Well, guess what? Even with them being downsized this year, not everyone there is going to be considered essential. Because dare I remind you that January 1st of 2025, the IRS had roughly 101,000 employees within the agency, right? And then shortly after the inauguration of our current administration, we had something created called the Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE. And essentially, everything that the IRS was able to do under Danny Werfel as the commissioner, all of the money that was allocated to them for different advancements and to better the agency, DOGE came in with an axe and cut them at the knees, right? So we saw the IRS go from roughly 101,000 employees to around 71,000. So just think about the transition of something like that. A business that big, losing almost a third of its employees, while also we have that chop right before tax season. During tax season, we expected delays with processing times, phone calls. Then fast forward to October 1st, we have a government shutdown. Okay. Now, under the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, we had money allocated to the IRS to cover 7 days for them to work at full capacity if we were to experience a government shutdown. Well, guess what? We did. So on Wednesday, October 8th, we anticipated another 35,000 IRS employees to be furloughed. Now, for these people furloughed, they should, hopefully, praying to God they still have jobs, be able to come back once we have everything back up and running, once a budget is decided on within Congress. However, if you experience delays in processing times during regular tax season, imagine what it's going to be like right now. 5 days away from the deadline, and we've taken a huge chunk of the force away. On Wednesday, colleagues of mine received calls from revenue agents letting them know, hey, I'm not going to be available for our meeting with the audit. Hey, we're going to have to postpone this. I'm out of the office until further notice. So we have taxpayers who are probably on the edge because they're undergoing an audit in the first place, who now have been put on the back shelf because these employees have been sent home. So we're going to see a delay with that. However, just because we have these delays don't mean that you have a get out of jail free card if you owe the IRS. A government shutdown does not equal an IRS shutdown. And here's why. Everything that is computer generated and automated is still going to be going. Listen, you might be thinking, so who cares? People will still be able to file their returns because that's an automated an automated system where they're able to file their returns. That's true. And if people actually pay online, those payments can be processed. But there's also a whole department within the IRS called ACS, the Automated Collection System. If you have owed the IRS and received a CP-14, a demand for payment, then you should know all about this department. This is who handles collections before they get assigned to a revenue officer. Check this out. Something else that this department handles are levies. If you're not familiar, a levy is where the IRS can go and garnish your wages, or they can garnish your Social Security, or they can garnish your pension, or they can do a search to find an account that matches your Social Security number. And once that account match happens, they can levy money directly from your bank account. All of these things are automated and need an actual person to be able to remove them. So if you've been playing around with the IRS, you know that you owe a balance and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for the right time. You need to make sure that you handle your IRS financial situation as soon as possible before you find your case in the hands of an automated levy. Because I'll tell you this, while there are still people working within the IRS, it is not going to be as easy and straightforward to get that levy removed. Let me tell you why. With the people that got sent home, we're looking at people who are more experienced. So that means they know their way around the Internal Revenue Manual. But something that people also have forgotten is under Commissioner Danny Werfel, and yes, I'm a fan, there were a lot of things done that pushed us forward as far as technology is concerned. Right? So the taxpayer online accounts, the Tax Pro online accounts that allow me to see different things about my clients right within the IRS website. Those were advancements that were made under him. But anytime there is an update in technology, we have now created a learning curve, right? So because he actually stepped down from being commissioner the day after the inauguration this year, some of the things with his vision were not able to be carried forward. Just to remind you, we've had 7 IRS commissioners just this year in 2025. Hold your horses, because we got 2 months and 3/4 left in the year. So at that rate, we could go through 2 or 3 more. The IRS has not had a steady hand under our current presidential administration. With all of that being said, the people that are going home have the experience and can actually work by understanding the Internal Revenue Manual. The people who are newer may be up to speed on technology, but they don't understand how the technology applies to the Internal Revenue Manual and vice versa. It's like this. You may be one of those all people are tax people. I hope not, because not all people are tax people. But you can understand in theory how to do a tax return, and then you can have software. For a person who understands how to do a tax return by hand on paper, they may not want to use software to do their return. I'm thinking of my dad, right? You may want to look at the instructions and put it all together. So if you have to now use this software to e-file, it's not that you don't know where things go on the return. Instead, you have this learning curve with the software. Whereas now we have people who believe all people are tax people, and they go to put things in software without the foundational understanding of how the tax return is actually done. Do you see where we have the big gap here? That is essentially what is happening within the IRS right now. The people that are working not all of them. Let me back up. There are some people who are well seasoned and they're up to speed with the technology, but that's not the story for everyone. Okay. So if they don't know their way around the Internal Revenue Manual, and I can attest to this because I haven't been doing this my whole life. I haven't been doing it for decades yet, but I've been on the phone with people at the IRS, and I know my way around the manual better than they do, because on that 5 to 7 minute hold they're putting me on, I'm telling them where they should go next, what to apply next. And I've never worked for the IRS. So because of the inefficiency, and we got rid of IRS employees earlier in the year, because of a government shutdown right now, we have even more inefficiencies because we have people who, no slight at them, don't have all of the experience and training that would be needed to transition right now. I'm going to calm down because I feel myself getting excited. How is that going to affect you? Let's say you don't have a tax debt, but you need to get your extension filed. Something happens with the e-file, so you can't e-file, you have to paper file. You make sure you do that. Guess what? Usually a paper file return, we got you in about 8 weeks, you're going to be processed. That's not going to be the case right now because the IRS is severely understaffed, and the paper processing of returns is not going to be priority. So you may not have your return processed maybe until 2026. And you may be thinking, Timalyn, that's a bit extreme, don't you think? No, because check this out. Typically, right after the extension deadline, not right after like the next day, but in November, the e-file system is shut down so the IRS can prepare for the next season. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news or not. I don't know if you are a regular listener of this podcast, and I've been going over different things with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That was passed in July of this year. What happened when that passed, some things went into effect for this tax year, for 2025. So it is going to affect your 2025 tax return that you are going to file in the spring of 2026. So not just routine maintenance does the IRS need to do to prepare for next season. They also need to figure out how they're going to place certain deductions that Congress created on the tax return. They need to figure out how certain things are going to flow through the individual tax return. Let's not even focus on businesses yet. Through the individual tax return so that tax professionals can actually prepare them correctly. Because here's the thing. Congress makes the laws, sometimes without fully thinking about how it's going to affect us as taxpayers or how it's going to affect the IRS. Because a lot of the things went into effect this year, such as no tax on tips, such as no tax on overtime, which, by the way, some tips will still be taxed, some overtime will still be taxed. Make sure you check out prior episodes so you're clear on what is and what isn't. The IRS has even less time to adjust for that. So Congress passes a law. Then the IRS has to translate it for different publications, for the instructions, for the tax professionals to prepare, for you to prepare if you are a DIY taxpayer. Then after they translated it and they do those forms, they do those publications, they have to make sure that their e-file system can accept those returns, that things will be processed correctly. Then we still have to look for our professional tax softwares to be ready for those adjustments as well. If you're a DIY person, your software has to be ready for those changes as well. So when we come back from this government shutdown, and I'm saying we because we are all in this together, we have employees that are going to come back, and there's going to be a lot of work that still needs to be done as it pertains to October. There's going to be a lot of work that they're going to come back to that is going to be need to be done in November as it pertains to getting ready for 2026 and as it pertains to making adjustments and things for the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Now, I don't think it's any fault of their own. However, those delays and processes are going to affect the taxpayers who don't owe as well. You are likely going to get things late in the spring just because if the IRS hasn't provided instruction for certain employers to report overtime, to report tips, then guess what? They're not going to be able to get that documentation out to you in time. If the IRS doesn't have forms and publications created within a reasonable time, and your tax professional still needs to take continuing education on these topics, guess what? It doesn't matter if you have forms ready or not. Your tax professional, if they are ethical and do their due diligence, are not going to be ready to prepare your tax return on time. And I'll say on time in air quotes because the spring is going to be very, very interesting, even without a government shutdown. Okay. So as you were looking at this, as you were preparing for the delays, here are some things that you can do to kind of navigate it. If you have to handle anything with the IRS by phone, make sure that you have prepared enough time to actually handle the situation. What does that mean? If you think that in the past it would have taken 30 minutes, go ahead and block out 90 minutes. If you are calling to handle a situation, do research about that situation to ensure that you have all of the documents that are needed for that conversation before you get on the phone. Because the last thing you want to do is wait on hold for an hour, talk to somebody for 30 minutes, and they request something that you know you have, but you don't have it readily available because you weren't completely prepared for the call. Okay? Next, if you have to handle anything with the IRS by phone, by mail, document it. When you call, make sure that you have the agent's name, that you have their badge number, you have the date, you have the time, and you write out everything that they told you. Okay? Because you need these for your records. If you have to mail something to the IRS, make sure that you are sending it certified. Listen, you may be thinking, I'm going to send it first class. It's going to get there faster. Well, forget that anyway, because faster doesn't matter. There's not anybody there to process it in a timely manner. But with certified, I can't tell you the reasoning. They want to see that green receipt. The green receipt has saved me countless times since I've been in this profession because it's proof that something was actually sent to the IRS. We have the tracking number to show that it actually was received at the facility. That has helped me with penalty abatement. That has helped me. They magically have been able to find something once I gave them the tracking number. Whereas where I've had clients send stuff first class, even though I had the tracking number, it still wasn't accepted. All right. So we're going to document all communication that is verbal. We are going to keep certified receipts for documentation that is by mail. We're going to make sure that we block out enough time if we have to reach out to the IRS by phone. But we're going to also be prepared for delays, not only right now, but also in 2026. This means delays for processing your tax returns. This means delays in getting your installment agreements approved. This means a delay in getting a lien or levy removed. This also is going to include a delay in receiving a refund. Okay, so like I said, whether you owe or not, you'll be impacted by this government shutdown. I do want you to keep in mind that the government shutdown does not equal an IRS shutdown. You still have an obligation as a taxpayer to file and pay your taxes timely. And again, before I go, I am urging you, if you currently have a balance that you cannot pay in full, this is not the time to push it back and ignore it. You need to make every effort you can to get that situation handled. Now, listen, I say this every episode. It does not have to be me, but make sure that you get the help you need. Prior to the shutdown, these last 3 months of the year, I was talking to God. And yes, I talked to God. That's my business partner. And I said, I want to help 15 people from October through December to work with the IRS. I thought they were going to get this budget thing rectified. I have been receiving calls as if I have a huge billboard and ads all over Google and YouTube. If you have the desire to work with me to get your situation rectified, you can book a call with me at www.bowenstaxsolutions.com. Now, I will tell you that for a consultation, for guidance, for you to DIY, if you want me to become your power of attorney so I can speak on your behalf with the IRS, those things are going to be timely. I just broke down why they're going to be even more timely. Those are not free when I go to bat for you. Okay. We have these free resources here on the podcast YouTube channel. Tax Tips with Timalyn has free and paid tiers, but working with me to have me handle your case will not be something that's free. But like I say, it doesn't have to be me. Just make sure that you get the help you need. The IRS is still collecting money from taxpayers, but they're operating at a very limited capacity. This includes services such as the taxpayer advocate. Okay, they're not going to be there to answer as many questions or to hold your hand throughout the process. If it's not me, I'm not offended. Don't bury your head in the sand with your IRS problem, okay? Make sure that you get the help you need. If you found this insightful, share the podcast. You'll help me on my mission to fill the tax literacy gap one taxpayer at a time. And make sure that you implement the information that I've given you, because back taxes shouldn't ruin your life. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen today. I'd like to thank Jim Ray Consulting Services for helping me get this message out to you. I hope you found the information helpful. Did you know 1 in 50 people have a tax problem? Please share this episode with your friends and family, because you never know who may need help. Again, thanks for listening. Hey, just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It provides a framework and possible solutions for solving your tax problems, but it is not legally binding. Please consult your tax professional regarding your specific tax situation.